A Dark and Vengeful God. Daniel Greenfield's column for Wednesday, June 20th, 2012. Read by Adam Taxin. Daniel Greenfield's columns can be found at sultankanish.blogspot.com. A Dark and Vengeful God. At the beginning of Sweeney Todd, the chorus of his murdered victims sings, "He served a dark and a vengeful God." In Egypt, an Islamic Sweeney butchered his wife after an argument, cut her up, and sold her mutilated body as lamb chops. Around the same time as Muhammad Sweeney was selling pieces of his wife to customers stocking up on meat before Ramadan, Egyptian voters made their own offering to the dark and vengeful God by voting for Mohammed Morsi, the candidate of the Muslim Brotherhood, whose offshoots such as Hamas and Al-Qaeda have a murder toll that beggars anything the real or fictional Sweeney could have aspired to. Morsi's election platform was ending the last light of freedom in Egypt by implementing full Islamic law. In a country where 84% believe that heretics should be killed, 82% believe that adulterers should be stoned, and 77% believe that thieves should have their hands cut off. The candidate of Allah, the dark and vengeful God of Islam, was bound to win any democratic election. As a god, Allah does not appear to be much of a life giver. Egypt has 6 times the infant mortality rate of the Zionist entity, 5 times that of the Great Satan, and 10 times that of the Japanese infidels. Indeed, the country with the world's highest infant mortality rate is the devout home of the Taliban, Afghanistan, which has an infant mortality rate that is 50% higher than that of Rwanda. Is Sharia law going to bring Egypt's infant mortality rate closer to that of Japan or Afghanistan? It isn't any good at that, but it will be good for beheading all sorts of people that the followers of the dark and vengeful God disapprove of, beginning with heretics. Indonesia just sentenced a man to 2 years in jail for writing "Allah doesn't exist" on Facebook. Thanks to Western innovation, Indonesia has Facebook, but it also has blasphemy laws, because if people started doubting the dark God, they might start asking why Indonesia has an infant mortality rate that is 13 times that of neighboring Singapore. It's not that the Muslim world doesn't have doctors, they just tend to be doing other things, like Dr. Ayman al-Zawahiri, a surgeon and the leader of Al-Qaeda, Dr. Mahmoud al-Zahar, a surgeon and co-founder of Hamas, Dr. Fathi Shakaki, the co-founder of Islamic Jihad, and Dr. Abdel Rantisi, a pediatrician and co-founder of Hamas, who boasted, "We will kill Jews everywhere." Who has the time to waste on pediatrics when you worship a dark and vengeful God who gave you a mission to kill as many infidels as possible? The only infant mortality rates they care about are the ones that they inflict. The Taliban in North Waziristan, Pakistan, have offered to allow polio vaccinations for their children only if the drone campaign against terrorists ends. This isn't the first time that Muslim terrorists have used children as human shields, though perhaps it's the first time that they used 161,000 children as human shields. The human shield principle depends on the Muslim knowledge that we care more about their children than they do. Pakistan has nuclear weapons and an infant mortality rate that is higher than those of Haiti, the Congo, Papua New Guinea, and some of the poorest and most desperate places in the world, as does Egypt. The Egyptians could have gone into this election asking themselves why an Israeli child across the border is 6 times more likely to survive his birth than one of their children is. Instead, they went into the election asking themselves how they could see more people beheaded for questioning their dark God. If they gave any thought to evening up the difference in infant mortality rates in the 264-mile distance between Cairo and Jerusalem, it was only by invading Israel or by supporting Hamas terrorists. That is how followers of a dark and vengeful God think. They don't wonder how they can save the lives of their children, but how they can even the cosmic score by taking the lives of someone else's children. They don't think in terms of making their lives better, but their minds are fixed on the dark goal of making other people's lives worse. Sweeney Todd was his own dark and vengeful God. So is Islam. Todd killed in his own name, and Islam kills in its own name. Draw a mocking cartoon of Muhammad or burn a Quran, and in a few hours there will be blood spilled in the streets of Muslim cities. Most of it will be their own blood, but that is what happens when you worship the dark and vengeful God inside you. When you bow before the rage churning in your own heart, then you sacrifice yourself to the heart within. Major Nidal Hassan, the Fort Hood killer, presented a slideshow explaining jihad with the words, "We love death more than you love life. The Jews love life, so that is what we shall take away from them." Hassan Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah, proclaimed, "We are going to win because they love life and we love death. "We love death," Addis Medun Janin, convicted of plotting to bomb the New York City subway, screamed at a 911 operator. "You love your life. There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger." When you worship death, then loving life becomes a sin, a blasphemy against the God of death, whose worship is death. "The jihad is our way, and death for Allah is our most exalted wish," are the words of the Muslim Brotherhood, the movement at the top of the Egyptian power pyramid, which is as obsessed with death as the ancient pharaohs were. But the pyramids that the Muslim Brotherhood and other Muslim groups construct are not tombs, but pyramids of corpses, giant funerary chambers of bodies, those of their own Muslim martyrs and those of their non-Muslim victims, to transport themselves to paradise. "Sweeney wishes the world away, Sweeney's weeping for yesterday," the chorus sings, hugging the blade, waiting the years, hearing the music that nobody hears. But these days everyone can hear the music and feel the blade. The Muslim Brotherhood has been waiting for years to cut away the world and bring back the golden oldies of yesteryear. The greatest hits collection of albums from the invasions and subjugations, the genocides and exterminations of non-Muslims around the world. Cults of death don't look to the present or the future. They look to the past, to the realm of the dead. They worship it and plot to bring it back. They despise the vitality of the living and the future, choosing instead the dirt and ash of the grave, the poisonous hatreds that never die, living on long after Muhammad rasped his last breath, after telling his followers to drive out Christians and Jews from the Arabian Peninsula. Why bother lowering infant mortality rates when you can bring back the glorious past? Why care about the infants at all if their only purpose is to die in the way of jihad? So what if they die when they're a few days old instead of 20 years old? It saves time, and their martyrdom can be blamed on the West, which is the source of all ills. The Prophet said, "A single endeavor of fighting in Allah's cause is better than the world and whatever is in it." And that includes the children. It includes skyscrapers, paintings, and books. It includes life itself. And then what's left except death? By voting for the Muslim Brotherhood, the Egyptian people proclaim that they love death more than life, that they love death more than the lives of their children. The ancient worshippers of Moloch passed their children between the flames, and the modern worshippers of Allah passed their children between the flames of jihad. The Egyptians have joined the Tunisians in the democracy of death at the dark altar of the ballot box, into which they drop their offerings and say, "We love death more than life, more than our children, more than thoughts, books, freedom, and civilization." And the world still does not understand what it is witnessing behind the outpourings of propaganda, the jubilant mobs and the analysts fluttering on behind the plastic desks and glowing logos of cable news shows. It is easy to analyze politics, but difficult to analyze evil. Talk about a cult of death has no place in the modern world, where it is a firm article of faith that everyone wants 2 turkeys in every pot and a car in every Cairo garage. Every intelligent person knows that all religions are the same, that democracy is good because all people are good. Leaders like Mubarak may be bad, but an entire people can't be bad. All religions celebrate life, and no matter how often they say, "We love death while you love life," they can't possibly mean it. But what if they do? What if the dark and vengeful God that the vast majority of Egyptians want to see executing blasphemers and mutilating thieves has been set loose by the ballot box? What if Allah is the dark half that civilized people and governments keep locked away? The part that tells butchers to chop up their wives and sell them to their customers, that tells merchants to turn into bandits, that tells Meccans to rape the wives of their neighbors, and that commands 1,000 other atrocities. What if all our democracy promotion efforts unlock that dark side, let the beast out of its cage and set it loose to kill? What if Islam's dark and vengeful God is a chimera maced out of the worst parts of his followers, their murderous instincts, their self-despite, their hatreds, lusts, and obsessions? What does it say about a people that proclaim their darkest selves to be their God? "We love death" is the anthem of jihad. It was the anthem of the butcher who chopped up his wife and served her corpse to his customers. It is the song of millions of Egyptians who choose death over life once they were given the freedom to do it. The death of life for the worship of the dark God who dwells in the darkest place of the human heart.